Ahoy there, Captain Benzie here, coming at you with another ship fitting guide for Eve Echoes, and this one, like the Drake before it, is very much by popular demand. Yes, we are finally looking at the Caldari Ferox. What is it with you guys in Caldari ships? They seem to be very, very popular vessels. Is it because of the sort of rugged, very traditional spaceshipy looks? Is it because most of them are missiles or they're shield tanks? I don't know, let me know in the comments why you think Caldari ships are the most popular. Now, speaking of most popular ships as well, we do of course have a little bit of time left on this week's giveaway of 4 combo Omegas. If you want to be in for the chance of winning one of 4 individual months of combo Omega, please jump onto my Twitter and tag me in at CPTBenzie, at Captain Benzie. Tell me what your favourite ship in Eve Echoes is and why. It doesn't even have to be a ship that you're already flying. Could be one that you're looking forward to getting at some point in the future. Give me a screenshot, tell me why you're excited about that ship, and you could be in for the chance of winning one of 4 individual months of combo Omega. Now that means today, yes, we are going to be looking at the Caldari Ferox. We're going to have a look at its stats, at its attributes and fittings, how this all goes together. We're going to then do a quick fitting guide and take it out and showcase it in combat. And I've actually developed a very secret love for this ship as well. Doing this video was an awful lot of fun. I've thoroughly enjoyed it and I hope you guys do as well. If you do enjoy the video, let me know by hitting a like on it, sub to the channel for all things Eve Echoes, ding that notification bell to make sure you will never miss a video as soon as it goes live. Helps you be in with a better chance of winning these competitions as well, if I do a short quickfire one, which I intend to do in the future. And of course, let me know what ships you want me to cover in future content by commenting down below as well. Finally, if you want to go the extra mile to support this channel, you can do so on Patreon, and we now have a merchandise store up and running on Redbubble too, in case you ever wanted to sort of wear the Catskull Academy, declare your colours publicly in real life. Anyway, that all said and done then, let's talk about the Caldari Ferox. The Ferox is a Caldari state battlecruiser that becomes available at tech level 7. So if we head to the Caldari ship tree to the battlecruiser line and then climb that to tech level 7, here we have the Ferox. And the Ferox is kind of the Caldari equivalent to the Minmatar Hurricane or the Amar Harbinger, in that it's their first turret battlecruiser and packs quite a wallop. Now, as we look at the Ferox here, you can see that it's got a fairly rigid outline to it, very traditional spaceship, very sort of typical Caldari design, and it does have some rather interesting skins as well, whether that's the Red Ochre available in the store, the Weirkomi, which apparently is coming soon, or the 2 Halloween skins. It got both the Halarange and the Grimace skin. Yes, the Ferox was one of the lucky few ships to get this supremely cool Grimace skins. I love the sort of the pumpkin face on that. The orange with the purple bats, ugh, it makes me want to fly a Ferox just for the skin. Anyway, attributes and fittings wise, the Ferox has 1 drone tube which can launch either small or medium drones. It's got 6 high slots, 3 mid slots, 5 low slots, and then 3 power grid rigs and 3 mechanical rigs. Now, the actual power grid output of the Ferox as well is fairly high at 988 megawatts. This is something that it needs because obviously turrets do use quite a strong amount of power grid, especially if we're looking at rifled railguns, and spoiler alert, the Ferox works best with rifled railguns. We'll discuss why later on. Defensively speaking, it's fairly tanky, but not for a battlecruiser, if that makes sense. There are other battlecruisers out there that have a lot higher defense than 23,576. That said, that's still a lot more tanky than most other cruisers or other ships that you might have available to you at Tech 7 as a Caldari pilot. So it's good, but it's just not as good as some of the others that will become available to you over time. Most of this is in the shields, 8,487 shield hit points compared to a measly 5,729 on armour and 5,816 on structure. The Ferox, therefore, is most definitely a shield tank. You've got a lot of HP there in the shield area. It means you've got a nice big shield bar that's going to take a bit of time to go through. That's really what you want to be looking at and working with for the most of the time. Looking at the rest of the stats here, signature radius 257.7 meters is absolutely huge. The Ferox is a battle cruiser. It's a big ship, it's got a big signature radius, it's an easy target to lock onto, it's easy to hit, and your shots and your missiles will apply their damage really well. They tend to do more damage to those big signature radiuses. We've also got a flight velocity of 177 meters per second, which is on the slower end of things as far as battlecruisers go, especially if you're comparing this to something like the Hurricane. Very slow, very big ship. And if we look at its mass and its inertia modifier as well, you can see that it is going to be a very slow and cumbersome ship as well. It takes a long time to align, a long time to accelerate and to decelerate, and it's not going to hold a tight orbit at any time soon. That said though, scan resolution is another problem with this ship. 166 is on the lower end of scan resolutions, even for battlecruisers. This means smaller targets like frigates and destroyers are going to take an astonishingly long time to lock onto, and that is a consideration you'll need to take. It means that they're going to be able to close distance and actually start to apply their own damage or scram you or do whatever it is that they want to do before you can actually apply a lock and even start to target them back. Worth bearing in mind. Now, if we look at the Ferox's trait descriptions, first of all, we have the roll bonus, and very much like the Harbinger and the Hurricane, we've got a 25% increase to the optimal range of our weapons, and a 25% increase to the accuracy fall-off of our weapons. Obviously, in this case, that is medium railguns, whereas the Hurricane, it's medium cannons, and the Harbinger, it's medium lasers. What we're looking at there, then, obviously, is a considerable range increase to medium railguns. And yes, you could apply this to something like the snub-nosed railguns, but I would argue that you want to apply this to one that has the bigger amount. Would you want 25% of 10 kilometers or 25% of 40 kilometers? It's entirely up to you, but like which way you want to do that. But to me, I would lean into that roll bonus and use a bigger weapon. And certainly, if we look then at the actual stats here, the skill bonuses, advanced medium railgun upgrade gives us an 8% increase to medium railgun damage and a 10% increase to medium railgun optimal range. That means at Advanced Medium Railgun Upgrade 5, we're looking at 50% additional optimal range on top of the 25% we already get from the roll bonus, and we get a 40% increase to medium railgun damage, which basically means that those 6 turrets we're using there are actually acting about 8.5 turrets. It's a big damage increase. Battlecruiser Command, then, being our second skill, gives a 5% increase to scan resolution. 25% increase, obviously, at full Battlecruiser Command 5. That takes our scan resolution from an abysmal 166 up to something a little bit more manageable. So that is a skill actually well worth training into, just so that you can actually lock onto something and be able to shoot it long before it actually gets into combat with you. Now, as we've just seen, the Ferox gets a lot of different bonuses to medium railguns, so we now need to decide whether we're going to go for medium rifled railguns or medium snub-nosed railguns. And considering most of the bonuses from the Ferox are to optimal or accuracy fall-off and to ranges, we have a choice then. Do we apply those 25% bonuses to a 40km optimal range, or that 25% bonus to a 5km optimal range? And for me, I would always lean into those bonuses, so I'm looking here at Magnate medium rifled railguns, and this entire fit is using meta level 8 gear, because some of you have said that it's cool seeing all the Dead Space level gear, but you'd rather see a slightly cheaper fit to give you an idea of what is achievable without requiring Dead Space gear. So here we are, everything is meta level 8. Magnate medium rifled railguns. These are our high slots here. We've got 6 of these fitted. They have an optimal range of 47.99 kilometers and an accuracy fall-off of 21.24. Call that optimal range 48 and the accuracy fall-off there 21. That means you're hitting only you're only hitting 50% accuracy at what? That's 69 kilometers. So nearly 70 kilometers before you hit 50% effectiveness is pretty impressive. The downside though of rifled railguns is, of course, their tracking speed. 14.25 in this case, and that 14.25 is pretty abysmal. It means if anything actually gets somewhat close to us and starts orbiting, that tracking speed is not going to be sufficient to actually maintain a good lock on whatever it is we're trying to shoot at. That means, theoretically, we want to try and obliterate our targets whilst they're at range, whilst they're getting close. That's when we want to take them out, before they actually become a problem, and you'll see me do that in the combat demonstration in just a moment. The mid slots though do help with this. The first of which, of course, I have 2 Halley target painters. These have an optimal range of 36 kilometers, an accuracy fall off of 90 kilometers, and they increase the target signature radius by 38.75%. That means with 2 of these on a target, you're making its signature radius significantly larger. And if that target is far away and approaching you, it should have a fairly low angular velocity. High signature radius, low angular velocity, tracking speed no longer matters. We just go straight up damage and hopefully blap that thing off the grid before it becomes too much of a problem. That said, if it does hit sort of the close range, we then do have a Predator Stasis Webifier here to help slow it down. This works very nicely against just smaller targets, lesser threats, things like the occasional interceptor or destroyer, that kind of thing, frigates or destroyers. You can slow them down by 61% flight velocity adjustment here, and then hopefully hit them with your turrets. And of course, we've got a drone for supplemental damage. Now, as I've said, the aim here is not to even let anything reach the kind of range that your drone and your stasis webifier are actively going to work at. So theoretically, you should never need to turn on the stasis webifier or actually even send the drone to target something, but it's there just in case. What type of drone you use really doesn't matter. The difference between DPS, whether it's explosive, kinetic, whatever, against whatever target you're using, doesn't really matter. And since it's only supplemental, the secondary stats, like how fast the drone moves around and that kind of thing, doesn't make too much of a difference either. It is purely supplemental, just go for whatever. I went for a Vesper because a Vesper is a Caldari drone and the Ferox is a Caldari ship. Yes, that is literally the reason. Now, if you're going against the storyline encounters, which the Ferox definitely can do, certainly at least the tier 6, tier 7 ones, and the storyline encounters there do occasionally have interceptors or other ships that are using micro warp drives. At that point, I would probably swap one of the target painters for some kind of warp scrambler. The better one you can get, obviously, the longer the range, but it's not really the ability to actually lock a target down. The warp jamming strength doesn't matter, it's only the range, and the fact that it'll switch off micro warp drives. Fast moving ship, if you switch off its micro warp drive and hit it with a stasis webifier that drops its flight velocity by 61%, then make its signature radius bigger with the target painter, suddenly your slow tracking turrets are actually capable of doing some real scary damage. Now, on that subject of kind of hitting a target before it gets too close, the first low slot to look at here is an Eagle tracking computer. Having this fitted to the ship increases my turret's optimal range by 17.19%, their accuracy fall off by 17.19%, and their tracking speed by 12.03. Those are the stats we've already seen up when we had a look at them in the high slots. That's having this fitted. I can then activate this to increase those boosts by 500%. That means rather than 12%, we're doing 5 times that, so doing a 60% increase to tracking speed adjustment. And it's worth noting that at that point, the high slot, the rifled railguns, suddenly start shooting an optimal range of about 74 kilometers, which means you can drop onto grid, you see something like a Slasher 2 interceptor coming for you, you lock onto that, you target it, you activate the tracking computer to get that 74 kilometer optimal range, you start blapping it, and hopefully it's either dead, or by time it hits 50 kilometers, by time the tracking computer runs out and deactivates, they should be at 50 odd kilometers anyway, at which point your standard optimal range is still sufficient to hopefully blap them before they get too close. Very useful for early on in the fight. And if they do get too close and you're having to use the warp scrambler and the stasis webifier, you can activate the tracking computer again for that tracking speed adjustment to hopefully help get a little bit more. While they're at range as well, why not use a narcotics magnetic field stabilizer to apply additional damage? Again, cold, just having this fitted to the ship, we've got a 5% increase to damage bonus of our railguns and a 4.3% reduction to the activation time, so they fire faster and they fire harder. We can then activate this, that will give an extra 8.6% increase to the damage bonus and will increase the activation time adjustment from 4.3% up to about 16.9% because it is now doing an extra 400% on top of that. It's actually about 17-18%. That's a big increase to DPS and brilliant if you need to just delete something as soon as possible. Now, hopefully, again, we should be outranging our opponents. We're sitting at about 50 kilometers on an orbit for the most part, but we've got a little bit of shield tank here as well. An Enterprise Adaptive Invulnerability Field ultimately increases the shield damage resistance across the board, means I take less damage when things are shooting at me, and we have a Disaster Medium Shield Booster just to repair any of the incidental damage that I do take. I take a couple of shots here and there, put the shield booster on for a few cycles just to repair that, and away we go. This means that ultimately the ship is not capacitor stable. We're looking 2 minutes 27 seconds here. It doesn't need to be because we very rarely have every single module on. We're sitting at range, we're firing and hopefully obliterating everything there. We just literally turn on modules as we need them. So remember, capacitor stability there is the time if everything is active at once. So if I turned everything on, we've got 2 minutes 27 seconds, but I'm never going to have everything on, so we are pretty much actually capacitor stable. Finally then, for the low slots, I've gone for a Ranger medium afterburner. Obviously we could go for something like a micro warp drive, but quite frankly I would rather have the steady speed increase of an afterburner without having to worry about the humongous impact to our capacitor that a micro warp drive has. We're not quite kiting, which is where a micro warp drive comes in to quickly get us from A to B. We just want to keep moving, and whilst shooting at our targets, we're not really kiting, we're much more skirmishing. It's kind of halfway between kiting and brawling. Moving on to the rigs then, and starting with the combat rigs, I've gone for a railgun collision accelerator first of all, 17.5% increase to the damage bonus. Again, you don't necessarily have to go for a tier 3 rig here, even a tier 1 rig will massively increase your DPS. The cost difference between a tier 1, a tier 2 and a tier 3 is absolutely massive, but the overall DPS increase isn't actually huge, so just go for what you can afford and upgrade it later on. It's pointless to spend all of your money onto one ship only to get it absolutely blown up in the first bit of combat you try it out in. Keep things cheap to start with, upgrade over time as you get used to the ship. Anyway, railgun collision accelerator to increase the damage bonus, and a railgun burst aerator to increase the activation time, so things fire faster and they're doing more damage. Straight up, that is both sides of the DPS equation. Now the third rig slot here is a railgun ambit extension, which increases the accuracy fall off of those medium rifled railguns. The reason I've done this is because, again, this allows me to have that extra range shooting at targets at a further distance, so I can absolutely, quite assuredly, destroy something before it reaches threat range. That is the aim here. I'm going to drop onto grid, I'm going to hit the most powerful targets first, get rid of those first, and then slowly work my way down to the point where I can comfortably orbit and not have to worry about things getting too close and under my guns. Now for the mechanical rigs, I've started off with auxiliary thrusters. Flight velocity adjustment just means I can move that little bit faster, I can maneuver through the battlefield looting quicker, I can, again, if things start coming towards me, I can power away from them, I can manually pilot that a little bit better. I've gone for a dynamic fuel valve. This reduces the amount of capacitor required to keep the afterburner running. This is not a capacitor stable ship. You can see 2 minutes 27 seconds as we mentioned before. The dynamic fuel valve helps maintain that. It means I can leave the afterburner running without worrying about how much it's actually affecting my capacitor and my stability. Third and final then, I've gone for a targeting system subcontroller. This one you could theoretically go for something like a capacitor capacity rig or a capacitor recharge rig if you want to try and maintain a bit close to capacitor stability. For me though, I find that 2 minutes 27 is more than enough. Remember, it's only 2 minutes 27 if you switch everything off. As long as you're cycling your modules carefully, you don't run out of capacitor with this, and you'll see that showcased in just a moment in the combat section. But the targeting system subcontroller, what that does is it takes my targeting from that abysmal like 100 and whatever it was we saw before up to a scan resolution of 351, which means I lock on significantly faster, which allows me to start dealing with encroaching threats a lot faster too. And the faster you can start dealing with something that's rushing towards you, the sooner it's dead and the less likely it is to actually reach a range where it forms a potent threat. Like when I did the Drake video, I've had Transstellar shipping exclusive route hard come up again. This is one of the Tech 9 encounters. It's an 8 million ISK encounter, well worth doing and actually surprisingly straightforward. So I thought I'd showcase the Ferox doing this one as well. Now you can see that as we're coming down to the last ship here, which is a Megathron, I am drifting manually away from it. I'm no longer maintaining my 50-kilometer orbit, I'm trying to move away from the ship, even though that means I'm doing less damage. That's fine. The reason I'm doing that is because I want the next wave to spawn further away. I don't want to be right in the middle of where that wave spawns. Here you can see all the ships have come out there at about 50 kilometers away, which frankly is perfect. I can now lock onto the targets I want to, put the target painters on, activate the medium rifled railguns, and that Nemesis straight away takes one heck of a shot, drops it right the way down to hull in two shots, third shot takes it out. I want to keep an eye on my turrets and my targets here. That Catalyst 2 is coming a bit close. Let's go for this Nemesis though. Again, we activate everything. It's 55 kilometers, 67 kilometers there. We obliterate that one down into armor in 2 shots. Second shot should take us comfortably into No, not quite, into hull. Yeah, I've spotted the 30-kilometer Corelli Catalyst 2 there. There goes the Nemesis. Onto that Catalyst 2 now, it's at 25 kilometers, so we're going to activate everything, including the computer, so that I get a better tracking speed, and once it's in range, I will also hit it with the Stasis Weber Fire. It's just out of range at the moment, 15 kilometers, we should just get it now. There we are, 14. Hopefully that's slowed it right down, we should get some nice shots off here. Fingers crossed. Yep, there we are, so we're through the shields of that Catalyst 2 already, and then onto, there we are, into hull. Haven't even sent the drone in at this point. I could actually send the drone, poor thing, just hovering around watching me do that. Next target obviously is the next Catalyst 2. I think that, when I say Catalyst 2, I think that is actually a Catalyst 2 interdictor, and being a Tech 9 ship, but either way, 50 kilometers away, quite comfortable doing the damage there. First shot takes us down to hull, to armor, second shot takes us down into hull, third shot takes it off the grid, and on to the Celestis 2 covert ops. And this is basically it. Now at this point, we can start to consider orbiting. I'm still going to manually pilot. I've double tapped into the distance there to give myself a nice angular velocity across the board here. And then once I start to get in range of that Talos 2, that's when I'll consider actually activating a 50-kilometer orbit and going around that. And it's really straightforward. It means that I can hit these ships at a good range and stop them getting too close. If, like that Catalyst 2 interdictor, they do happen to get a bit too close, for comfort, I can still slow them down and deal with them that way. And then I can just lazily finish off the rest of the encounter. There's no stress going on here at all. I'm now at sort of the 43 kilometers. There we are. We'll hit a standard orbit here on the Talos, I think, and open fire on that. Getting a little bit of lag as I'm playing here at this point in time. I am obviously on LTE, and Zimbabwean LTE is dodgy at best, I think would be a polite way of saying it. But now we're onto the Talos. Slowly taking that one down, a little bit slower than obviously going through the others. Obviously, it's a battlecruiser compared to frigates. That kind of goes without saying. But the Talos 2, now we're into its armor, lazily drifting past it. I'm not even on an orbit yet. I'm comfortably in that 25 kilometer range. I'm moving at a high angular velocity, moving completely abeam to those other ships. So you see I'm maintaining pretty much a perpendicular flight path there. That is the maximum flight velocity you can possibly get. And you'll see 81% shields. 81% shields. Nothing is even, like, you know, it's not scary. I haven't got the shield booster running at the moment. There's no real need to. I'm going to put it on for a couple of cycles now to pick up the shields, but it's just, there's so little damage going on here that it's a languid, gentle pass. I feel like a whale drifting through space. A whale equipped with rifled railguns. And now we're on to the Dominics. So I've actually hit an orbit here, and you'll see I'm going to move at a pretty much full-on direct away flight path here, which theoretically you should never do, but I'm not too worried here with the Dominics. They're not particularly good shots, and I'm far enough away for it not to be a humongous problem, the fact that I've got a 0 degree angular velocity here. I'm now in the orbit here against the Dominics, and I can slowly start pulling this one down. Now, the Dominics is actually an interesting ship. I'm looking forward to eventually doing content on these as well. As far as the Galente ships go, the Dominics is one of the cooler looking ones. But hey, let's not focus too much on that. And essentially, that is literally it. You can see I'm now actually at the orbit point. I'm at 50 kilometers. We're now actually going to properly start orbiting this core Dominics. I'm already down into its armor. We can start pulling through there. I've got the magnetic field stabilizer active. Let's activate the tracking computer just in case that's going to apply a little bit more damage. We're doing, what, nearly 2,000 damage a shot there. Comfortably pushing our way through 1,500, 1,600 damage. No trouble at all. There we are, working our way through the Dominics' armor. I quite like the silhouette here of the Ferox as well. I've mentioned this before, I quite like the ruggedness of Caldari ships. They're very angular, very pointy, very squared off. And the Ferox really actually, you know, exemplifies that. And I wonder if that's not where the name comes from. Ferox, obviously, like ferrous, iron. I don't know, is there any actual lore as to why the Ferox is called the Ferox? Is it just kind of a play on that? Because most of the Caldari ships, of course, are named either after birds or mythical creatures. Things like, you know, the kestrel, the bantam, and the bantam is actually a chicken, which I only learnt, like, literally about a year or so ago. Things like the heron, that kind of thing, are all birds. Then you've got things like the manticore, the naga, which are all sort of creatures of myth and legend. So what actually is a Ferox? Let me know in the comment section below if you've actually found out what a Ferox actually is, because I don't know. Now basically, I want to just wait until we clear this wave so I can showcase what happens at the start of the next wave, and then again we're kind of doing that same thing of maintaining range, ready for the next wave to spawn, so that we can start dealing with our targets one by one. The Dominix is now well into its structure, it's just waiting for it to finally give up the ghost and go boom. Very slowly. Obviously it's a big ship, it's a battleship, the Dominix. Which is why we haven't done anything on it. Obviously, the only battleships we've got access to at this time are the faction battleships, like the Rattlesnake. So here we are, double tap into distance, start moving away. Any shot now is going to finish this wave off, and there we are. There it goes, next wave starts, so we're going to lock onto things, and we're 85 kilometers away. That's why we do that drift at the end. I can now lock onto everything, I can pick my targets, and slowly, one by one, begin to take those down in my preferred order. And we're going to start, obviously, with those Nemesis, I think. Possibly that Catalyst 2 Interdictor. Yeah, let's go for that one. Get the Catalyst 2 Interdictor down. So again, we're going to put those target painters on. And again, you can see the lag now, and activate the turrets. And we're going to put the targeting computer on as well. And typically the targeting computer doesn't activate before the shots do. But there we are. It's at least going for these ones. And there goes that Catalyst 2 down nice and quickly before it poses a threat. Everything else is still sitting well over 50 kilometers away. Nice and easy target for me to pop. Anyway, folks, I think that really does wrap up everything here to say about the Ferox. I have a newfound respect and admiration for this ship. I'm really enjoying this one. I enjoyed making this video. I enjoyed testing this out with different builds. I did try a snub-nosed build. I know some of you in the comments will say that, you know, oh, you really enjoy your snub-nosed Ferox. I personally found it a little bit too risky and a little bit too, like, difficult to pull off. Whereas this Ferox, the rifled railgun Ferox, to me, was a real, gentle, languid approach to the game, and it actually felt really quite soothing, almost, to go out into an anomaly like this and just pop each ship one by one, without worrying too much about the damage coming back at me. Let me know your thoughts and opinions though. Do you use the Ferox? Is this a ship that you've been wanting me to do for a long time? Probably this is the most requested video on this channel. I don't think there's been a video in a good many months now that hasn't had please do a Ferox video in the comment section somewhere, let alone my Discord, private messages, etc. Just please, Benzie, do a Ferox. Well, here you go. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Thank you for watching right the way to the end. Happy sailing, and see you in New Eden.